shouldn't have listened.
I didn't notice it the way you notice a new crack in a wall or a stain on the ceiling. I noticed it the way you notice yourself taking a different route to work. It just happens once. Then again. Then it's your route. The hallway light stayed on the first night because I was tired. That's all it was. I'd just moved in. Boxes still stacked in the living room, my mattress on the floor because the frame hadn't arrived yet. Winter coming down hard outside, the kind that makes the windows sound thin. I brushed my teeth in the bathroom, came out and stood at the end of the hall looking at the light switch. You know the feeling when your bed is calling you? That's the only way to put it. I remember thinking I'd shut it off after I put my phone on the charger. Then I crawled under the blanket and didn't move again. When I woke up, the hallway light was still on. That should have been annoying. Instead, it hit me like I'd left the porch light on for someone. Like I'd done something considerate without meaning to. I stared down the hall from bed and felt settled. That's the embarrassing word, but it fits. I left it on the next night too. Not because I decided to, I just didn't turn it off. I walked past it, glanced at it, kept going, like it was part of the house. I didn't call it fear. I didn't tell myself I was afraid of the dark. I've slept in plenty of dark rooms in my life. I grew up with parents who would walk through the house switching off everything behind them. My dad used to say it was like paying rent to the electric company for fun. So I wasn't raised to leave lights on. The third night, I came out of the kitchen after washing a plate and noticed the living room lamp was on. I had a lamp because the overhead light in that room had a pull chain, and it felt like something from a basement. The lamp sat on a side table next to the couch. I must have turned it on earlier and forgotten. That was the simple answer. Still, I stood there with my hand hovering over the knob. The light was warm, and the room looked normal. The couch looked like a couch. The boxes looked like boxes. But the corner near the window looked deeper than it should have, like the light didn't reach it the way it usually did. I didn't turn the lamp off. That night, I slept all the way through. No waking up at 3 to pee, no staring at the ceiling, no half-dreams that fold back into waking. In the morning, I told myself I was exhausted from the move and my body finally caught up. That's the story you tell yourself when you want your life to make sense. Over the next week, I started leaving the kitchen light on too, the small one over the sink. It wasn't bright. It was the kind of light people leave on when they're expecting to come back into the room. I wasn't expecting anything. I just didn't turn it off. When I left for work, the house looked like someone was still awake. A hallway light, a lamp, a little glow in the kitchen. My neighbor commented on it when she walked her dog past my place one night. She was older, friendly in that nosy way. She waved and pointed and said something like, "You like it bright in there." I laughed and told her I was still unpacking, like that explained it. That was the first time I felt weird about it. Not because of what she said, but because I realized I'd stopped noticing it until someone else did. Then the bill came. It wasn't insane. It wasn't the kind of bill that makes you call the company and accuse them of theft. It was just higher. Higher than the last apartment, which made no sense because my last place was older, draftier, and the heat fought a losing battle every winter. I stared at the bill in the kitchen and did the math in my head. I went room to room looking at the lights I left on, like I was trying to catch myself doing something wrong. I changed bulbs to LEDs. I bought a pack from the hardware store. Cold white light, harsh and clean. I figured if the lights were going to be on, they might as well be cheaper. The first night with the new bulbs, the house looked wrong. That's the only way to say it. The light felt too sharp, like it was cutting the room into pieces instead of filling it. I sat on the couch with the TV off, just listening to the heat kick on and off. The hallway light glared down the corridor like a hospital. The kitchen light made the sink look metallic and dead. I got up and changed the bulbs back. I told myself I didn't like the color. It was easier than saying the truth, which was that the older bulbs felt safer. Their warm light made soft shadows. The new bulbs made sharp ones. And yes, I hear how that sounds. A month into living there, I tried to turn them off. It wasn't a big decision. It was a "this is stupid" decision. I was standing in the hall looking at the switch and feeling annoyed with myself. I'd always been a person who liked sleeping in a dark room. I didn't want to become someone who needed a nightlight. So I reached up and flipped the switch down. The hallway went dark. Immediately, my ears felt full, like pressure on a plane. I swallowed. It didn't help. My chest tightened in a way that didn't feel like panic. It felt like someone had pressed their hand flat against my sternum. I stood still because moving felt like it might make something happen. That's another embarrassing thing. I stood there in the dark like I was a kid again, waiting for my eyes to adjust. I could see the faint glow of the living room lamp. I could see the kitchen light. The hallway itself was black. I took one step toward the bedroom and felt the floorboard shift under my foot. A normal house noise. That's all it should have been. But the darkness in the hall felt active. Like the dark had weight, like I was stepping into something thicker than air. I flipped the light back on. The pressure in my ears eased so fast it made me dizzy. I stood there breathing through my mouth, staring at the bright hallway like it had just saved me. I laughed at myself, a quick, ugly sound. Then I locked my front door, checked it twice, and went to bed. The next day I told myself it was stress, my brain playing tricks. People get anxious in new houses. People make up weird rules when they feel out of control. So I tried again a few nights later, more casually, like I was proving a point. This time I turned off the living room lamp. I left the hallway light on. I left the kitchen light on. I just shut off the lamp and sat down on the couch in the dimness. Nothing happened. I waited, trying to make myself relax. 10 minutes, 20. I watched TV, half paying attention. The room stayed dim and normal. I felt stupid for making it a thing. I went to bed and slept fine. In the morning, the lamp was on. I stood there staring at it, my hand on the switch, trying to remember if I'd turned it back on before going to bed. I couldn't picture it. I could picture walking through the room. I could picture brushing my teeth. I could picture getting into bed. I couldn't picture turning the lamp back on. I told myself I must have. Then I noticed the angle of the lampshade. Slightly crooked. Like someone had bumped it and straightened it halfway. That's when my stomach did something small and unpleasant. A drop. A twist. I started checking light switches as soon as I woke up. It became a habit, and that habit made my mornings feel like inspections. Hallway light on. Kitchen light on. Living room lamp on. Every time. Even if I was sure I'd turned one off. I didn't like the thought that I was sleepwalking. I'd never done that before. I looked up symptoms online and regretted it. Every search result was either a joke or a medical article that made it sound like you were going to walk out of your house naked and die. I bought a cheap motion camera meant for pets. I told myself it was for peace of mind. I set it on a bookshelf in the living room, angled so it could see the hallway and the kitchen. The first night, the camera recorded nothing. It was set to record movement. There were no motion events. Still, in the morning, the lamp was on, even though I'd shut it off before bed. The second night, I adjusted the sensitivity. I wanted any movement to trigger it, even small. The camera caught me once at around 2 in the morning, walking from the hallway into the living room in my socks. I moved like someone half asleep. I didn't look around. I went straight to the lamp and turned it on. Then I stood there. That's the part that makes my skin crawl, even now. I stood there facing the hallway with my arms at my sides, not moving. The camera recorded for a minute, then stopped because it only records when it senses motion. It cut off with me standing there, like a statue in my own house. When I watched it the next day, I paused it and stared at my own face. My eyes looked open but unfocused, like I was looking through the camera rather than at anything real. I didn't remember any of it. I deleted the footage, then pulled it back out of the trash folder and watched it again. Then I deleted it again, like deleting it could make it not have happened. After that, I didn't try turning off the lights anymore. I accepted it. That's the honest word. I accepted that the lights would stay on. I accepted that if I turned one off, I might turn it back on without knowing. I accepted that my body seemed to prefer it. Life got smaller. It narrowed around the lit spaces. I started doing everything in the same rooms. I stopped going into the guest room at night because it stayed dark. I stopped using the laundry room after sunset because the light there was weak and the shadows pooled along the floor. I stopped taking out the trash at night. That's the kind of behavior change people don't notice from the outside. You can still go to work, you can still smile at coworkers, you can still buy groceries. You just stop doing certain things when it's dark. You become a person with invisible rules. One Friday night, I had a friend over. We hadn't seen each other in a while. We ate takeout on the couch. We talked about stupid things. The lights were on in the hall and the kitchen, like always. At one point, she stood up and said, "Do you mind if I turn this off?" and pointed at the hallway light. "It's kind of bright." I didn't answer fast enough. She looked at me and laughed, like she thought I was being weird. Then she reached for the switch. The hallway went dark. The room didn't get darker overall because the lamp was on and the kitchen light glowed. But the hallway itself became a black strip, a tunnel. My ears filled with pressure instantly. My throat tightened. I tried to swallow and couldn't. My friend turned toward me, her smile fading. "Are you okay?" I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to sound insane. So I did what I'd been doing. I got up quickly and flipped the hallway light back on. The pressure eased. My body steadied like I'd been holding myself up with muscles I didn't know were tense. I laughed too loudly and said something about the hall being creepy, made a joke about horror movies. She laughed with me, but her eyes stayed on my face for a second too long, like she was reassessing me. Later, after she left, I stood in the hallway with the light on and felt angry. Not at her, at myself, at the house, at whatever rules I was living by now. I went into the living room and turned off the lamp. Then I turned off the kitchen light. I left only the hallway light on, bright and sharp. I walked to my bedroom and got into bed in the dark room, staring at the ceiling. The light from the hall spilled under the bedroom door in a thin strip. I slept for maybe an hour. I woke up with the sensation that someone had called my name. That quick, sharp jolt that pulls you out of sleep. The house was silent. Too silent. No heater hum, no fridge motor. Nothing. I held my breath and listened. Then I heard my socks slide on hardwood. Not footsteps, not a person walking with weight, just fabric sliding, like someone dragging their feet without lifting them. The sound came from the hallway. I sat up, heart hammering. The strip of light under my door was gone. The hallway light was off. I didn't remember turning it off. I got out of bed and opened my bedroom door. The hallway was dark. The living room lamp was on. The kitchen light was on. The lights I'd turned off were on. The one light I'd left on was off. I stood there in the doorway trying to understand. The ear pressure started, slow and heavy. My stomach turned. I walked toward the hallway switch, moving carefully. Each step felt like walking into colder water. My eyes adjusted enough that I could see the outline of the wall. I reached for the switch. Before my fingers touched it, the switch clicked. Up. The hallway light turned on. I jerked my hand back so hard I hit the wall. The light didn't flicker. It didn't surge. It came on like someone had flipped it normally. I stood there shaking, staring at the switch plate like it had just moved. The pressure in my ears eased again. I didn't go back to bed after that. I sat on the couch with all the lights on, staring at nothing, and waited for morning like you wait for a storm to pass. The next day, I bought more lamps. That's the kind of decision that feels normal when you're living inside it. I bought a lamp for the guest room, a lamp for the hallway table, a small nightlight for the bathroom. I told myself it was cozy. I told myself I liked the glow. I told myself it was winter, and people get weird in winter. I didn't tell myself I was building a house full of little suns. Over time, I learned the rule without ever saying it out loud. Darkness did something to me. When the lights stayed on, I stayed in my bed. When a light went off, I moved. Sometimes I would find myself in the kitchen in the morning with the cabinet open, like I'd been looking for something. Sometimes I'd wake up in the hallway with my hand on the wall. Once I woke up sitting on the floor in the bathroom with the nightlight unplugged. That was the worst one because my head felt full of cotton, like I'd been underwater. I plugged the nightlight back in and the bathroom immediately felt like a normal room again. I started keeping a notebook by my bed. I'd write down what lights were on before I slept. Then in the morning, I'd write down what lights were on when I woke up. It sounds obsessive because it was. My handwriting got messier over time, like the act of recording it was eating away at something. The entries were boring at first. Hall on, kitchen on, living room on. Then I started writing notes beside them. Felt dizzy before bed. Woke at 2:13 on couch. Dreamed the house was holding its breath. I'd look at my own notes later in the day and feel like I was reading someone else's thoughts. The notebook didn't explain anything, it just showed me the pattern. The pattern was that I was losing my nights. You know how people say you spend a third of your life asleep? I started thinking about that in a different way. I started thinking about how much of my life I wasn't there for. How much time passed while my body was doing something else. I started sleeping with my bedroom door open so the hallway light would spill into the room. I started keeping the closet door cracked so it wouldn't be a dark rectangle. I started keeping a small lamp on my nightstand even though it made it hard to sleep. The weird part was that I did sleep. I slept like someone drugged. Deep, heavy sleep. The kind you wake up from feeling bruised inside. One Sunday afternoon, a winter storm rolled in and the power went out. It happened in the middle of the day, which made it worse. If it had been night, maybe my brain would have accepted it. But it was 2 in the afternoon. The sky outside was gray, snow falling hard. The house went quiet in a way that felt unnatural. It wasn't just the electronics, it was everything. The fridge stopped humming. The heater stopped clicking. The little background noise you don't notice until it's gone. I stood in the kitchen holding a mug of coffee, listening. The silence pressed on my ears like the start of that familiar pressure, but slower, more patient. I opened my phone flashlight and walked through the house, shining it at walls, corners, furniture. I don't know what I expected to see. I think I expected my own fear to have a shape. The flashlight beam felt thin and weak. It made harsh shadows that jumped when my hand shook. The pressure in my ears grew. My stomach twisted. I felt nauseous. I stopped walking and stood very still. The silence deepened. That's the moment I understood something without putting it into words. Moving made it worse. I stood there, holding my breath, trying to be as small and quiet as possible in my own living room. My phone screen dimmed after a minute to save battery. The flashlight faded. The beam weakened. The pressure in my ears surged. My vision blurred. My hand fumbled for the screen. I tapped it. Nothing. My gloves slipped. My fingers were sweaty. The flashlight shut off. The house went fully dark. I don't remember falling. I remember the sensation of my knees giving out. Then nothing. When I came back, I was on the floor in the hallway. It was dark. The power was still out. My phone was on the carpet a few feet away with the screen cracked, flashlight off. My ears hurt. That deep ache you get after loud noise, except there was no loud noise. My head throbbed. I pulled myself up against the wall, breathing hard. In the dark, the house didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. I know, that's a loaded word. I'm not trying to write a horror line. It's the simplest way to describe the sensation. Like the space around me wasn't just air. I crawled to my phone and turned the flashlight back on. The beam hit the wall, and the pressure in my ears eased instantly, like letting go of a breath you didn't know you were holding. I sat there on the carpet with the flashlight pointed at the hallway wall, breathing through my mouth like I'd run a mile. I stayed like that until the power came back. When the lights flickered on, every light in my house that had a switch was on. Hallway, kitchen, living room, guest room, bathroom nightlight. Everyone. I hadn't touched them. The power had been out. Still, they were on, like the house had decided for me. That night, I didn't turn off a single light. I didn't even pretend. I left them all on and went to bed with my door open, the hallway shining into my room like a strip of daylight. I slept. In the morning, I woke up in my bed, right where I'd fallen asleep. That should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like compliance. Like I'd paid something in light and been allowed to stay where I belonged. After that, I stopped trying to understand it. I stopped trying to fight it. I moved into a different rhythm. If I left the house for the weekend, I'd leave the lights on. If I went to the store, I'd leave a lamp on. It didn't matter if I was gone, the lights had to be on. I started feeling anxious in other people's houses when they turned off a lamp. I'd offer to leave it on. I'd make jokes. Once I stayed at a friend's place for a night and woke up at 3 a.m. standing in her hallway reaching for a lamp switch. My hand was inches from it when she opened her bedroom door and asked what I was doing. I froze, like I'd been caught stealing. I told her I couldn't sleep and I was looking for the bathroom. She stared at me and said, "The bathroom is the other way." I nodded and walked away, heart pounding. In her kitchen later, she asked gently if I'd been stressed lately, if I'd been sleeping. I told her I was fine. That's what you say when you're trying to keep your life from turning into a story you can't control. I moved out of that house at the end of the lease. I told myself I needed a smaller place, less maintenance, closer to work, normal reasons. On my last night there, with boxes stacked by the door, I turned off every light. I wanted to do it. I wanted to leave the house in darkness like a clean ending, like closing a book. The hallway went dark. The living room went dark. The kitchen went dark. The house became a shape of cold air. Immediately, the pressure slammed into my ears so hard I stumbled. My vision tunneled, my stomach lurched. I reached for my phone. The screen wouldn't wake up. My fingers slipped. The house was too quiet. I couldn't hear myself breathing. I felt my body start to move without my permission. A slow step forward, like my feet had chosen a direction. I flung my arm out and found the hallway wall. My hand found the switch plate by feel. I flipped it up. The hallway light turned on. The pressure eased. My knees stopped shaking. I stood there in the bright hallway with my heart racing, staring at the light like it was an apology. I turned on the kitchen light, the living room lamp, the bathroom nightlight. I left them on and walked out of the house for the last time. In my new apartment, I can sleep with the lights off. Most nights, sometimes. Still, there are nights when I wake up and feel that familiar pressure in my ears, like something is waiting in the dark for me to stop moving. On those nights, I turn on a lamp. I tell myself it's just habit. I don't write it down anymore. I don't set up cameras. I don't test it. Because the worst part wasn't the lights. The worst part was how quickly my life reorganized itself around them, like I'd been doing it for a long time and only just noticed. I didn't bring the chair with me. That matters more than it sounds, because if I had, I could have blamed myself for everything that came after. I could have said it was sentimental or ugly or something I'd been holding on to without realizing why. But I didn't. It was already there when I moved in. The apartment was empty except for it. That should have bothered me on day one. An unfurnished place with a single chair sitting in the living room near the window. No couch, no table, just one wooden chair angled slightly toward the glass like someone had stood up and forgotten to push it back. I assumed the landlord had left it by accident. I remember thinking I'd ask about it later, then immediately forgetting to. There were boxes to unpack, keys to label, the small, exhausting rituals that come with starting over somewhere new. The chair faded into the background the way unimportant things do. It didn't feel unimportant then. The first night, I moved it without thinking. I needed space to walk, so I nudged it toward the wall and set one of my boxes where it had been. It scraped softly across the floor, that hollow wooden sound chairs make. Nothing strange about it. The next morning, when I came out of the bedroom, the chair was back near the window. Not exactly where it had been before, just close enough that my brain hesitated. I stood there holding my coffee, staring at it, and did what people always do when something doesn't quite fit. I smoothed it over mentally. Maybe I moved it back and forgot. Maybe I nudged it in my sleep. I was tired. Moving was exhausting. I didn't touch it that day. That night, I turned on the living room light and sat on the floor with my back against the couch I hadn't bought yet, eating takeout. The chair sat a few feet away from me, facing the window, its back to the room. It felt rude somehow, like sitting behind someone who was already seated. I rotated it so it faced inward toward me, then went to bed. In the morning, it faced the window again. That's the moment it stopped being furniture and started being a habit I didn't remember forming. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself orientation doesn't matter, that chairs get bumped, that floors settle. I even checked the level of the floor with an app on my phone, as if that could explain intent. The floor was fine. I stopped touching the chair after that. I let it face the window because it was easier than thinking about why it wanted to. Days passed, then weeks. I furnished the rest of the apartment slowly. Couch, coffee table, rug. The chair stayed where it was, half hidden behind the arm of the couch, always angled toward the glass. I didn't sit in it. I don't know why. There was no clear reason. It just felt reserved, like it wasn't for resting. Friends noticed it before I ever brought it up. One of them asked if I was planning to replace it. Another joked that it looked like a thinking chair. Someone else asked if it was antique. Each time I shrugged and changed the subject. What I didn't say was that every time someone mentioned it, my chest tightened a little, like they were drawing attention to something that worked better when ignored. The first real shift happened without drama. I realized one night that I'd been standing in the same place for a long time. I'd gotten up to refill my water, then stopped near the couch, looking out the window. I don't remember deciding to stop, I just did. The street outside was quiet, lit by a single street lamp that flickered slightly in the cold. I stood there long enough that my legs started to ache. That's when I noticed the chair was directly behind me. Same angle, same line of sight. I stepped away from it, unsettled, and went to bed. After that, it kept happening. I'd catch myself pausing near the window, staring out without thinking, sometimes in the evening, sometimes late at night. I wasn't watching anything specific. Cars passed, trees moved, the normal, boring motions of a street that didn't know me. But the act of standing there felt necessary, like scratching an itch you didn't know you had. I started to notice patterns in my own behavior. I avoided sitting in certain parts of the room. I ate standing up more often. I stopped pulling the curtains closed all the way, leaving a narrow gap so the streetlight could spill in. I didn't connect any of this to the chair at first. It felt like my choice. That's how it worked. The realization didn't hit all at once. It came in pieces, small enough to ignore until they formed a shape I couldn't pretend not to see. The chair moved at night. Not dramatically, not across the room, just enough to reset itself if I'd bumped it during the day. If I shifted the rug, the chair would be aligned with the window again by morning. If I pushed it closer to the wall while cleaning, it would drift back overnight. I never heard it move. That part bothered me more than if I had. Silence leaves room for excuses. I tried marking its position once. I put a piece of painter's tape on the floor, lining it up with one leg. In the morning, the tape was still there. The leg wasn't. I peeled the tape off and threw it away like it had embarrassed me. The night I finally sat in the chair, it wasn't an experiment. It wasn't bravery. It was fatigue. I'd had a long day. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to stand anymore. The chair was there, empty, waiting in the way things wait when they don't need to rush. I sat down. The seat was firmer than I expected, cold through my clothes like it hadn't warmed to anyone in a long time. My feet rested flat on the floor, my spine straightened without effort. I didn't realize I'd been slouching everywhere else until then. The window filled my vision. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The street looked the same, quiet, empty. Then my breathing changed. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't gasp. My breaths just became shallow, like my body was conserving something. My chest felt tight, but not painfully so, more like pressure. I tried to shift my weight. My legs resisted. Not locked, just heavy, like they were reluctant to break position. I stood up quickly, heart pounding, and the feeling vanished as if it had never been there. I didn't sit in the chair again. I didn't need to. Something had already adjusted. After that night, I found myself standing in front of it more often, not touching it, just occupying the space it seemed to define. My posture changed when I was near it. My shoulders pulled back, my head tilted slightly, like my body remembered something my mind didn't. Sleep became uneven. I'd wake up with stiff legs, my calves aching as if I'd stood for hours. Once I found dirt on the soles of my feet, though I couldn't remember leaving the apartment. I told myself I was stressed, that I was walking more in my sleep, that I needed better rest. The chair remained where it was. One morning, after a light snowfall, I noticed a long, smooth line in the snow outside the window. It ran from the fence toward the building, stopping directly below my living room window. There were no footprints near it, no signs of dragging on either side, just a single, clean compression in the snow, like something narrow and heavy had slid across it. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Behind me, I felt the presence of the chair without turning around. I knew where it was. I knew the angle it faced. That was the first time it occurred to me that the chair wasn't watching the street. It was marking it. I covered the line in the snow with my boot later that day, embarrassed by how deeply it unsettled me. When I checked again that evening, it was gone. Snow had fallen. The yard looked untouched. The chair hadn't moved. I started keeping the living room light on at night, not because I thought it mattered, because darkness made the window feel closer. I avoided looking outside after sunset. I learned where to stand so my reflection wouldn't overlay the glass. I rearranged my routine so I wouldn't cross the living room late at night. The chair didn't care. It didn't react to avoidance. It simply remained. The worst part was how normal everything else stayed. Friends came over. We talked, we laughed. No one screamed or ran out. The chair was just a chair to them, an odd leftover piece of furniture. Except once. A friend stood up mid-conversation and frowned at the living room. "Do you feel weird in here?" she asked. I froze. She gestured vaguely toward the window. "Like pressure or something?" I laughed too quickly and blamed the heater. She nodded, unconvinced, and stayed near the kitchen for the rest of the visit. After she left, I stood alone in the living room staring at the chair. I tried to imagine removing it, carrying it out to the dumpster, leaving it on the curb. Every time I pictured that, my mind slid away from the image, like it didn't want to hold it, like the thought itself was discouraged. That scared me more than the chair ever had, because it meant the chair didn't need to move me physically. It had already taught me where not to go. I don't know when the nights started happening. The first one I remember clearly, I woke up standing. My feet were cold. The room was dim. For a few seconds, my brain refused to assemble the scene. Then I realized I was in the living room, in front of the window. The chair was behind me. I wasn't sitting in it. I was standing where it would place someone if sitting wasn't required. My hands hung at my sides. My posture was rigid, attentive. I turned slowly, afraid of what I might see. The chair was empty, facing the window. I went back to bed without turning on any lights. After that, it happened more often. Sometimes I woke standing. Sometimes I woke with my legs aching like I'd held tension all night. Once I woke sitting on the edge of the couch facing the window, the chair inches behind my calves. I stopped setting alarms. I stopped trusting my memory of sleep. I tried recording myself once, left my phone propped on a shelf, camera angled toward the living room. In the morning, the recording stopped at 3 hours, battery drained, nothing unusual captured. But my calves ached again. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, and that's why it worked. I came home one evening and found the chair slightly farther from the window than usual. Not much, a few inches, enough to make space behind it. I stood there staring, heart thudding. understanding blooming slowly in my chest. The chair wasn't for sitting. It was for positioning. It was teaching the house where a person should be, where a person should look, where a person should remain. I moved out 2 weeks later. I didn't take the chair with me. I left it exactly where it was. In my new place, I catch myself standing in front of windows late at night. Same posture, same tension in my legs. Sometimes my calves ache for no reason. I don't own a chair like that. I don't need to. Whatever it trained me to do, I already know. I didn't try to remove the chair again. That decision didn't feel like surrender at the time. It felt practical. The way you stop arguing with a loose stare because you know where it is now. You adapt. You learn the shape of the problem and move around it. I told myself I could live with it. The days that followed were quieter in a way that should have been comforting. No more drag marks in the snow. No more sounds at night that I could point to and say, that was something. The chair stayed where it belonged, facing the window, unmoving, and I stayed away from it. I arranged my life so I didn't have to pass through the living room after dark. I showered earlier, I ate earlier, I slept with my bedroom door closed and a chair, not that one, wedged under the handle, even though no one had ever tried to open it. Still, my body kept betraying me. I'd wake up with my calves sore like I'd been standing for a long time. Sometimes my lower back ached in that dull, specific way it does when you've held yourself rigid. Once I woke with my hands cramped, fingers curled inward as if they'd been gripping something all night. I checked my phone for step counts again and again, like numbers could save me. They didn't show anything unusual. What changed instead was my sense of time. Nights felt longer, not because anything happened, but because I couldn't account for all of them anymore. I'd go to bed exhausted and wake up feeling like I'd skipped something important, like I'd walked into a room mid-conversation. I started leaving notes for myself. Simple things at first. Went to bed at 11:30. Door locked, lights off. In the mornings, the notes were always still there. Nothing contradicted them, but the soreness remained. One evening, I came home to find the chair pulled slightly closer to the window than usual. Not much, an inch, maybe 2. It shouldn't have mattered. If I hadn't been watching for it, I might not have noticed. But I did notice. And the moment I did, my stomach dropped. Because it meant the chair wasn't just resetting itself. It was adjusting. I stood there for a long time, keys still in my hand, staring at that small change. The space behind the chair was narrower now, more precise, like it had been measured. I backed away and went straight to my bedroom, heart pounding harder than it should have. That night, I dreamed of standing. Not of the chair, not of the window, just the act of standing still, muscles tight, eyes forward, waiting for something that never arrived. When I woke up, my feet were filthy. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at them, throat tight. The dirt wasn't from outside. It was fine, gray, like the dust that settles in corners you don't clean often. Living room dust. I didn't go in there right away. I showered, I dressed, I tried to calm myself down with routine. When I finally stepped into the living room, the chair was where it always was, facing the window. The floor beneath it was clean. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was about movement. The chair wasn't dragging me anywhere. It was placing me. I started to remember things I hadn't questioned before. Small moments that hadn't registered as events, standing at the window for no reason, the way my posture straightened when I was near it, the ease with which my body slipped into that position like it had always known how. I realized I hadn't actually sat in the chair since that first night. I'd been standing in front of it instead, replacing it. The chair wasn't meant to be used forever. It was a template. Once I understood that, the house felt different, not hostile, organized. I noticed how the living room subtly funneled movement toward the window, the angle of the couch, the placement of the rug, even the way the overhead light cast shadows that drew the eye outward at night. It wasn't dramatic, it was efficient. I tested something then, carefully. One night, instead of avoiding the living room, I went in on purpose. I turned on all the lights. I stood directly in front of the chair and faced the window. Nothing happened. No pressure, no compulsion. I took a step back. Still nothing. Then I moved into the exact spot where I'd woken up standing before. My legs locked. Not completely, just enough that I felt it. A familiar tension slid into my calves, my lower back. My shoulders pulled back without me thinking about it. My chin lifted slightly. I wasn't being forced. I was being aligned. I stepped away, heart racing, and the sensation faded. I didn't sleep much after that. The final night in the apartment came sooner than I'd planned. I'd packed most of my things, boxes stacked in the bedroom. The living room was bare again, like when I'd first moved in, except for the chair. I stood in the doorway one last time and looked at it. I felt an unexpected surge of anger then. Not fear, anger at how quietly it had rearranged me, at how easily my body had complied. I crossed the room and grabbed it. The weight surprised me again. That wrong distribution, like the chair resisted being lifted as a whole. I carried it to the center of the room and set it down, deliberately turning it away from the window. I stepped back and waited. Nothing happened. For a moment, I felt almost foolish. Then my legs began to ache. The sensation built slowly, like lactic acid. A familiar pressure settled in my lower back. My breathing shifted without my permission. I realized I was standing in the wrong place. The chair wasn't correcting itself. I was. I stepped forward before I could stop myself, body seeking the position it had learned. My foot crossed an invisible line on the rug, and the discomfort eased immediately. I froze, heart pounding, understanding snapping into place. The chair wasn't the problem anymore. It had already done its job. I backed away, forcing my legs to move despite the protest in my muscles, and left the apartment without looking back. I didn't return for the chair. When I think about it now, what scares me most isn't that it moved. It's that it didn't need to. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself standing too still in front of windows, my posture straight, my breathing shallow. I force myself to sit down, but my legs still ache. And sometimes, I feel like I'm interrupting something that was already in progress. I need to say this first, because if I don't, everything that comes after will sound wrong. I didn't see it because I was scared. I didn't see it because I was looking for something. I didn't see it because the room was dark or because my mind was already running. I saw it because I was tired. That matters, because fear has an edge to it. You feel it in advance. This didn't come with any warning. It arrived when my body was operating on routine and my thoughts were somewhere else. I had just come home from work. It was late enough that the building was quiet, but not late enough to feel unsafe. I kicked my shoes off by the door, dropped my bag, and went straight to the bathroom to wash my face. That was my habit. I didn't even turn the light on fully, just the mirror light above the sink. Soft, warm, enough to see myself without thinking about it. I leaned forward, hands on the edge of the sink, water running. That's when I noticed my reflection lag. Not dramatically, not like in movies where the image freezes or smiles back. It was subtle enough that I almost missed it. A fraction of a second where my face didn't move when I did. I blinked and straightened. Everything was normal. I stared at myself for a few seconds, waiting for my heart to start racing. It didn't. I looked tired, pale, lines under my eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. I turned the water off and went to bed. If I had panicked then, maybe this would have ended differently. But nothing about it felt important enough to panic over. The next time it happened, I was brushing my teeth. I leaned closer to the mirror, checking a spot near my gum, when I felt something tighten behind my eyes. A pressure, like the start of a headache. In the mirror, my reflection was closer than I expected. Not closer in distance, closer in posture. Its shoulders were slightly forward, head angled differently than mine. I froze, toothbrush buzzing uselessly in my mouth. The reflection adjusted, matched me again. I spat, rinsed, and stared at myself until my eyes watered. Nothing else happened. I told myself what everyone tells themselves: exhaustion, stress, lighting. I'd been sleeping badly for weeks. Anyone would see strange things. What I didn't admit was how careful I became after that. I stopped leaning too close to mirrors. I avoided looking at my reflection when I was tired. I checked mirrors only when I felt alert, grounded. That avoidance felt smart. It wasn't. The first clear sighting happened a week later. I had just gotten out of the shower. The bathroom was steamy, mirror fogged except for the patch I'd wiped clear with my hand. My hair was damp, towel around my shoulders. I bent forward to wipe the mirror again, and there it was, standing behind me. Not a shadow, not a blur, a person. Its face was dark, too dark for the lighting, like the skin absorbed it instead of reflecting it. The eyes were wrong in a way I can't describe cleanly. They caught the light, but not like human eyes do. There was no warmth to them, no depth. Hair hung around its face in long, uneven strands, darker where it clung together, as if it were damp. I didn't scream. I didn't move. Because in the same instant that I saw it, I felt its hand on my shoulder. Not gripping, not gentle, present, solid. I turned around so fast my towel slipped. The bathroom was empty. Steam curled toward the ceiling. The shower dripped. The room smelled like soap and warm tile. I stood there shaking, breath coming too fast, staring at nothing. Then I looked back at the mirror. It was still there, standing where I had been, facing forward. My reflection was gone. I don't remember backing away from the sink, but I must have. The next clear memory I have is being pressed against the bathroom door, heart pounding so hard it hurt, eyes locked on the mirror across the room. The thing in the reflection didn't move. It didn't turn its head. It didn't follow me with its eyes. It just stood there, occupying my place. I don't know how long I watched it. Time didn't behave normally. My legs went numb. My mouth was dry. When the mirror light flickered, the reflection vanished. Not faded, gone. My reflection returned like it had always been there. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't turn the bathroom light off either. I sat on the edge of my bed with my back to the wall, watching the doorway, listening to every small sound the apartment made. Morning came without anything else happening. In daylight, everything looked normal. The mirror reflected me again, tired and pale, eyes ringed with red. I told myself I'd imagined the whole thing. I told myself that until I noticed the bruise on my shoulder. It wasn't large, just a thumb-shaped mark, darker than the surrounding skin, sore when I pressed it. I took a photo of it with my phone, hands shaking. Then, I covered the mirror. Not dramatically. I didn't smash it or throw it out. I draped a towel over it like it was a piece of furniture I didn't want to think about. I avoided mirrors for days after that. I used my phone camera to check my appearance if I had to. I brushed my teeth without looking up. I showered with the curtain pulled tight, eyes down. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. Because once I'd seen it, I started noticing reflections everywhere. The dark screen of my TV, the microwave door, windows at night. At first, there was nothing, just my own tired face staring back at me. Then, one evening, while my phone screen was black between notifications, I saw eyes. Not directly behind me, off to the side where my shoulder would be. I dropped the phone. When I picked it up again, the screen lit and the reflection disappeared. That's when I understood something that made my stomach drop. The mirror hadn't created it. The mirror had introduced it. After that, the appearances became more frequent and more precise. It stopped lagging. It stopped misaligning. It started matching me perfectly. I'd catch glimpses of myself in reflective surfaces and feel wrong about it, like I was seeing a recording instead of a live image. Movements too smooth, blinks slightly off. Once in the elevator, I watched my reflection in the steel wall and realized it was breathing when I wasn't. I turned away and stared at the floor until the doors opened. The next physical contact happened in the kitchen. I was standing at the counter, chopping vegetables, focused on my hands. The overhead light was bright, harsh. The window behind me was dark. I saw a movement in the reflection of the knife blade. Before I could react, something brushed my lower back. Just fingers. Cold. I spun around, knife raised. Nothing. But when I looked back down, my reflection in the blade was smiling. I dropped the knife and backed away, heart hammering. I stopped cooking after that. I stopped using anything reflective. I ate takeout with the lights on, sitting away from windows. Still, it learned. The last time I saw it clearly, I wasn't alone. I was at a friend's place. We were talking in her living room, late, lights low. I'd almost convinced myself I was safe there. She paused mid-sentence and frowned. "Why are you standing like that?" she asked. "Like what?" She gestured vaguely. "Like you're trying to stay out of the light." I forced a laugh and sat down. That's when I saw it. In the dark TV screen behind her. Standing where I should have been. Watching. I don't remember leaving her apartment. I remember being outside, air cold on my face, hands shaking so badly I dropped my keys. After that, I stopped trying to hide. I stopped covering mirrors. I stopped avoiding reflections. Because I realized something worse than being watched. It wasn't following me. It was replacing me when I wasn't fully present. Tired, distracted, half aware. The final confirmation came one morning when I woke up with my neck sore and my jaw aching. I checked my phone. There was a photo in my gallery I hadn't taken. It was a mirror selfie. The phone held up at arm's length, my apartment bathroom behind me. And in the photo, I wasn't alone. The reflection showed me standing slightly out of alignment with myself. Two heads, two sets of eyes. One looking at the camera, one looking past it. I deleted the photo. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection unexpectedly, I'm not sure which one I'm seeing. And I don't stay long enough to find out. I didn't delete the mirrors right away. That part surprises people when I tell them. They expect something decisive, smashing glass, covering everything, some dramatic line in the sand. But fear doesn't usually work like that. Fear negotiates. Fear waits to see if it really has to change your life. So I left the mirrors where they were. I just stopped trusting them. I learned how to move through my apartment without looking directly at reflective surfaces. I angled my body slightly when I passed the bathroom. I turned my phone face down on tables. I stopped watching TV at night because the black screen felt like an invitation. What I couldn't stop was the feeling that something was learning me. It wasn't random anymore. The appearances followed a pattern, and once I noticed that, I couldn't unsee it. It only happened when I was tired, only when my thoughts drifted, only when I wasn't fully there. If I stayed alert, caffeinated, focused, present, nothing happened. I could stare into mirrors as long as I wanted. My reflection behaved perfectly. But the moment I let my guard down, even slightly, the world shifted just enough to let it through. The first time I tested this on purpose, I hated myself for it. I'd had a long day. My body felt heavy, my head buzzing in that dull underwater way exhaustion brings. I stood in the bathroom and looked at the mirror, telling myself I was just brushing my teeth, just getting ready for bed. I watched my own eyes soften as I zoned out. The reflection didn't follow. It stayed sharp while I drifted. Its head tilted a fraction of a degree. I snapped back instantly, heart slamming against my ribs. The reflection corrected itself a beat later, like it had been caught mid-movement. That was confirmation. After that, I couldn't pretend this was a fluke. It was responsive, conditional. It needed me absent. I started sleeping with the lights on. I listened to podcasts constantly, voices filling the silence so my mind couldn't wander too far. I drank coffee late into the evening, even though it made my hands shake. I was afraid of being alone with my thoughts. That worked for a while. Then it adapted. I saw it one afternoon, broad daylight, reflected faintly in my laptop screen while I was working. I wasn't tired then, just focused, too focused. The realization hit me hard enough that I had to sit back in my chair. It didn't need exhaustion. It needed autopilot. Any moment where I stopped actively choosing my movements, my posture, my breath, that was enough. I began to understand something else too, something that made my stomach drop whenever I thought about it. It wasn't entering my space. It was taking my place when I left it. The mirrors weren't windows. They were checkpoints. They showed when the handoff happened. The physical signs started escalating after that. I woke up one morning with soreness along my jaw, like I'd been clenching my teeth for hours. Another time, my shoulders ached deeply, the way they do after holding tension too long. Once I found a faint red mark on my wrist, thin and horizontal, like pressure from fingers. I didn't remember anything. I set up cameras after that, not because I thought I'd catch it on video, because I needed to see myself. The first night, nothing happened. I watched the footage in the morning, fast-forwarding through hours of me sleeping, tossing, turning. The second night, the footage glitched. It skipped from 2:14 a.m. to 4:02 a.m. No static, no error message, just missing time. In the morning, my calves burned when I stood up. The third night, the camera didn't glitch. It recorded everything. I watched the footage in the morning with my laptop balanced on my knees, hands cold. At 3:11 a.m., I sat up in bed. Not abruptly, smoothly, like I'd been awake already. I stood, walked out of the bedroom, and stopped in front of the bathroom mirror. I didn't move after that. I stood there for 46 minutes. No shifting, no fidgeting, no sway, just stillness. At 3:57 a.m., I turned my head slightly toward the mirror. The camera couldn't see my face from that angle, but I knew what I'd see if it could. At 3:58 a.m., I walked back to bed and lay down. In the morning, my neck felt like it had been locked in place. I didn't watch the footage again. I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. For a while, that helped. New environment, fewer mirrors, people around. But the thing about reflections is that they're everywhere. Windows, phones, polished surfaces, dark glass. I caught it once in the reflection of a cafe window while waiting for my coffee. Just a glimpse, my outline wrong, shoulders set differently, head held at an angle I never use. I turned sharply, spilling coffee on myself. There was nothing behind me, but the barista stared at me like I'd done something strange. That was when I realized the most dangerous part. Other people couldn't see it. They only saw me flinch, saw me pause too long, saw me drift. To them, I was the one behaving oddly. I stopped trying to explain. The last clear, undeniable moment happened weeks later. I was home alone again, exhausted, careless. I leaned against the bathroom sink, eyes unfocused, staring at the covered mirror without really seeing it. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down to read the notification. When I looked back up, the towel had slipped. The mirror was uncovered, and I wasn't centered in it. The reflection showed me standing half a step to the left of where I actually was. There was space beside me, occupied. It didn't look at me. It looked through me. I felt its hand close around my wrist, tight enough to hurt this time. I screamed and yanked my arm back, stumbling away from the sink. The towel fell completely, fluttering to the floor. The mirror showed only me, but my wrist burned. Red fingerprints bloomed across my skin, too clear to deny. That was the moment I stopped trying to coexist. I left everything behind. Apartment, job, city. I moved somewhere smaller, quieter, fewer reflective surfaces. A place where I could control my routines more tightly. I live carefully now. I don't let myself drift. I don't let my mind go slack. I stay present even when it hurts, because I know what happens when I don't. Sometimes, late at night, when my eyes are heavy and my thoughts start to blur, I feel the familiar pressure behind them, like someone waiting for me to step away. And I understand now that it doesn't want to chase me. It doesn't need to. It just waits for the moment I stop being here. That's all it's ever needed.